So we're in an environment where doctors love to prescribe labs because patients love to get them because they think it tells them the status of their health. You deserve informed consent. Your lab test should inform, not scare you into dependency. So if your lab work comes with a prescription, but no lifestyle discussion, that's a big red flag right there.
Ready to live at the higher vibrations, where peace, love, joy, and good health are the daily standard? That's what this show is all about. Welcome to Vibe. And here's your host, Robin Openshaw.
Hey everyone, Robin Openshaw here. Welcome to the Vibe Show. And today I want to talk to you about lab tests and how when we used to have just a handful of them a generation or two ago, we now have literally hundreds and hundreds of them. And this sort of became front of mind for me when I went in for my annual lab testing, which every year I debate whether I'm even going to do lab testing anymore. I've had so many strange experiences with labs, which I'll talk about a couple of them in this episode today. But I went in for my annual lab testing and I went to LabCorp and they asked me for $2,600 before they were going to draw my blood. And I just laughed out loud and I said, hey, thanks. No, but no, thanks. And just walked back out the door and told my practitioner, yeah, I'm not doing that. So, anyway, my practitioner had me come into his office and he drew the blood for $400 and something, which I still think is a lot. But I kind of take issue with this because when you're dealing with a healthy person who has no diagnoses, no health complaints, and they try to charge you $2,600 for routine lab tests, which is more than the average person makes in a month, I think we've gone overboard. So I already had lots of issues with strange aberrations in lab tests throughout my life. So I decided to pull those together and potentially write a book about it. So I'd love to have your feedback anywhere online. Let me know if you like the idea of my writing a book about labs. I actually am going to put some titles of the book up to workshop it for people who've read my other books. So if you're following me online, watch for that. I have a new date. I have a launch date for my book, Take Daily: How Supplements Hijack Our Health. And it is September 1st. Okay. We could do it sooner than that, but apparently summertime is a bad time to launch a book. So please be on the greensmoothiegirl.com mailing list so that you know when the book comes out, but it will launch on September 1st. And I'm really excited about it. I have a co-author for this one, and we are recording our Audible book, and he is British. And so I think you'll enjoy that I'm recording every other chapter and he's recording every other chapter. I know he's going to be your favorite because he just has that fabulous British accent that I do not have. So anyway, today's subject, I got into it intending to cover 20 labs that I had researched that I think that we all need to know more about because we put so much emphasis on labs, and labs are really an entry point into lots of drugs and supplements. And so it's become very lucrative, not just for the lab industry, but for just medicalizing absolutely everything about labs. So, trying to charge me $2,600 for way too many labs for a healthy person is ridiculous. But then, whatever your labs say, they've got something to prescribe you for it. So I kind of just want to empower you or get you at least thinking about all these labs. And hey, why do we have 100 times more labs than we did a generation ago? Is that really helping us? Do we really even know that much about the numbers that we get when we run these labs on the blood? I don't even get into in this video the fact that they take a whole tube of blood for every biomarker they're going to test, and they'll walk away from you with what looks like a quart of your blood, right? I mean, you might as well have donated blood. They give so much blood. I saw that the medical medium is talking about how it's an absolute scandal and that it's bleeding people. So that was an interesting thing to think about. I have certainly had that thought in my annual lab draw is, wow, they sure took a lot of blood out of me. It does not seem like they should need a whole test tube of blood for every single marker that they're looking at. So you have the right to say, I don't need that many labs. And my practitioner did try to prescribe me something that was $315 that I concluded I do not need or want whatsoever. And so we're all having to make choices like this, saying no to labs, saying no to drugs or supplements. I just am not trying to give you at all medical advice so much as just make you aware that there's been a huge proliferation of the number of labs available to you, and have you think about the fact that we somehow are in this strange culture of our health is supposedly dictated by all these numbers that we, the end user, don't understand the numbers. And so we just take some doctor's word for it that our number is wrong and got to take something to correct it, which often corrects absolutely nothing. So, anyways, that's the lead up. I meant to do 20 labs and then my video got kind of long. So, in the 19 minutes that follows, you're only going to get, I think, 13 of the labs that I cover. But if you let me know if this is a subject that's interesting to you, I am going to continue working on this book and publish probably early 2026 a book on the whole strange proliferation of the lab industry. Okay, so with that, here's the video that I prepared. This is the audio track of it. Hey everyone, Robin Openshaw here. I want to talk about 20 labs that you should question. I've become really deeply concerned about the labs industry. Have you ever noticed how there are more and more of them, and the lab results lead millions of people straight to the pharmacy? Modern medicine has become obsessed with lab tests, not just for diagnosing disease, but for creating new conditions that feed $1 trillion pharmacy industry. So some of these tests were developed not because they saved lives, but because they sold drugs. Welcome to the era of disease mongering by lab work. It's a brilliant marketing ploy because all you have to do is tell someone that they have a lab value that's too high or low, and the vast majority of people will sign up for hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of further testing or treatment, even if they can't afford it and it means going into debt. They're quickly and easily convinced that something is wrong with them, but your labs can vary widely for an almost uncountable variety of reasons. Within a day, they can range, within a week. And what's the healthy range for you might be different for someone else. For instance, I have had low iron my whole life. My whole family has low iron. Randomly, living in Park City, this is really my only theory, is that I moved to 8,000 feet above sea level. My labs for iron were suddenly very high, but just a few times, and then moved to Florida and they came down to normal low baseline. Okay, which is within what they say is normal, but it's low for normal. And actually it's still high the first year. So it actually took quite a while to adjust. I did nothing about it. Besides that, I'd go give blood, which is what my practitioner recommended, because by then I'd really started to seriously question labs in general. That doesn't mean I throw them all out, but I just ask a lot more questions and put less stock in them than most people do. So then recently I was told that I had 20 times higher CRP, which is the main inflammatory lab biomarker than is normal. So high that my practitioner told me only smokers had inflammation that high. That made no sense to me, as I do not smoke and I play pickleball almost every day, and I don't even have so much as a joint that hurts. Nothing's puffy. So I got the lab again, and voila, super low inflammation, like always. Even my nurse practitioner said happens all the time. So I want to run through 20 of the most controversial or overused lab tests, or sort of boutique lab tests geared towards the upper middle class who love labs, that too often lead healthy people down a path of unnecessary medication, fear, and long-term dependency on some drug, and on getting retested annually. in some cases, even more often. So let me run through these 20 labs. And since that's kind of a lot, I'm just going to tell you what the lab is, what it supposedly finds. Okay. Just imagine me making air quotes, and what class of drugs it pushes, or usually some kind of synthetic supplement, and why this is a red flag at best and an outright scam at worst. So this is going to go really fast because there's a bunch of them. Number one, the DEXA bone scan. What it finds: osteopenia or osteoporosis. Until the DEXA scan was invented just 35 years ago, nobody had ever even heard of osteopenia. But never fear, there are drugs for it. It may not make sense to you that taking chemical or petrochemical drugs preserve your bone mass, and it doesn't make sense to me either, but well, that's what we do. No one has ever even validated if the light refraction technique used in the DEXA scan even actually measures bone density. In fact, strangely, the vast majority of bone fractures occur in the top quartile of DEXA bone scans. So according to DEXA, the strongest bones are the ones breaking most often. We don't prescribe people to eat more leafy greens and do some impact exercise, even walking. I mean, my 82-year-old dad has the bone density of a 30-year-old, according to his doctor, for instance, because, that works, eating greens and actually doing some impact exercise. But what a doctor will usually tell you if you question them why they don't prescribe that is, well, we tell patients to do it and they just won't. So they drug them instead. So what is it that the DEXA bone scan pushes? Biphosphonate drugs. So Fosamax and Boniva are the most common ones. Why is it a red flag? It turns natural bone thinning of aging into a disease. Osteopenia isn't even a real pathology. It's a made-up label to prescribe drugs that can cause jaw necrosis and femur fractures. And most doctors don't know this. They believe the marketing since 1990, just like you probably do. Dentists found out accidentally that jaw necrosis, or a dying jawbone, is one of the effects of taking biphosphonate drugs. And femur fractures. Okay, why would your legs breaking be a common adverse event of taking bone strengthening drugs? I mean, just you don't have to think about that for more than a few seconds. An adverse event of taking a drug to strengthen your bones really shouldn't be that your jawbone dies and rots, or that your leg bones break more often than others. Houston, we've got a problem. Okay, so number two, the PSA, or the prostate specific antigen lab test. And what it supposedly finds is possible prostate cancer. What it pushes is biopsies and surgery and hormone blockers. And often, this one really upsets me because men are not told that when they undergo these procedures, most often they'll never have sex again. And why it's a red flag: the PSA test has an outrageously high false positive rate. So many men undergo life-altering procedures for slow-growing cancers that they'd never die from. The developer of the PSA test himself tried to walk it back, but too late. It was already big business. And his test is still used widely, with millions of men chemically castrated, like both my father and father-in-law have been, both of them in their 80s, when the prostate cancer is highly unlikely to be the thing that kills them. Number three, high cholesterol. What it pushes is statin drugs. Why it's a red flag: it oversimplifies a really complex system. Statins are often given based on flawed targets, with little benefit in low-risk people, and in fact, potential harm, because statin drugs simply do not work. They make people feel like crap, and they do not reduce the incidence of cardiac events. Massive studies show this, even though they may create an impression of a benefit by lowering a biomarker. Okay, let's talk about number four, hemoglobin A1C in borderline cases. What it finds is what they call prediabetes. What it pushes is gets people to go on metformin or Ozempic or the newer glucose lowering drugs. Why it's a red flag? We'll have a bunch of problems with Ozempic, but we won't go sideways on that. But prediabetes is a slippery slope. The fix is in our diet and lifestyle, not in lifelong meds. I was told in my 20s, pregnant, and eating burgers and fries and Diet Coke every day, that I was borderline for gestational pride and diabetes. And I changed my diet and have kept my diet healthy and have had optimal blood sugar labs ever since. So for literally 30 something years. Number 5, vitamin D testing. I'll be brief on this because I'm always talking about vitamin D testing. But what it defines is a deficiency in the vast majority of people, like literally 80% plus. What it pushes is high dose D3 supplements or prescriptions, because they really do qualify as drugs. So more and more they're prescriptions, even by standard of care medical doctors. Why it's a red flag? Well, labs vary wildly. Deficiency cutoffs are hotly debated, and synthetic D without magnesium or K2 can create new problems, since cholecalciferol, or what they call vitamin D, isn't actually the corticosteroid hormone the body makes. And K2, the product they sell you, is actually made from coal tar. It's only similar to the nutrient in the body due to some molecules they have in common. Anyway, I've written extensively about the fraud that is vitamin D supplementation, so I'll leave this longer topic, but I'll link you to my most important articles down below so that if this is new to you, you can go deeper. If you've been taking cholecalciferol believing that you have a deficiency, please do read my articles below. Number 6, TSH only, or taking thyroid stimulating hormone labs and just calling it good at that. What it finds, they'll call it hypothyroidism. What it pushes is the drug levothyroxine. Why it's a red flag? Well, TSH alone is a very narrow lens. Millions are over or under medicated because full thyroid panels aren't run to actually ascertain if you aren't making an adequate amount of thyroid hormone. Really, more tests are needed, as there are downstream and upstream precursor hormones which all play a role. I found, in going to now 9 bioidentical hormone practitioners over the last 25 years, also called natural hormone replacement practitioners, that might be helpful if you're Googling them in your area, that they're all kind of winging it. There's very little standard of care nailed down. It's a young art and science, and so they're just kind of all over the map. That said, I'd still choose one of them versus regular MDs who will mostly just take the TSH test alone and potentially prescribe you inaccurately a drug that isn't even molecularly the same as the thyroid your body makes. I've found the best ones of the practitioners to be nurse practitioners who focus entirely on bioidentical hormone replacement. And I don't take the vitamin D or the fish oil that they will try to sell you. Number 7, mammograms. Okay, this is actually a screening test. It's not a lab technically, but I'm including it here anyway. What does it find? DCIS, or ductal carcinoma in situ, and benign masses. What does it push? Surgery, radiation, and fear. Why it's a red flag? Super high false positives and overdiagnosis of cancer that may never become dangerous. Most functional and integrative doctors will tell you that your body produces aberrant growths many times during your life, the vast majority of the time, also metabolizing it or breaking it down effectively so you never even knew it was there. So mammograms both cause breast cancer with their radioactive waves, and also diagnose so early that stage 0 and stage 1 breast cancers, actually, they don't even call stage 0 breast cancer anymore, but 10 years ago they did. Your body would have just resolved so many of those on its own. And instead they get overtreated, also putting women into a state of panic and destroying their quality of life. All right, now we're getting into some lesser known sort of boutique
tests, but number 8 is the LDL particle size testing. So what it's finding is pattern B LDL is what they call it. And I don't think they know enough about it to be pushing people onto the drugs they do, but what it pushes is cholesterol meds, even beyond just statins. Why is it a red flag? Well, this is a cherry-picked lab in boutique clinics, and it's used to overtreat people at marginal risk. I don't think we really know why there's different particle sizes in LDL cholesterol. Okay, number 9. This one I kind of tend to go off a lot about too is MTHFR and genetic SNP panels. And what they find is genetic variants of genes that we actually all have, but they don't tell you that. So people tend to take it as a diagnosis and use it to explain that, oh, my body just doesn't detoxify. Not true. What it pushes tends to be special supplements or meds. Usually it's vitamin B complex, which is not a vitamin and has no food involved in it. We'll mention that in another category in a minute. Why it's a red flag: association is not the same thing as causation. You're not broken just because your genes aren't ideal, according to very incipient awareness of the human genome. We just don't know enough about it to be so prescriptive like functional medicine has gotten about MTHFR. So number 10, low T. Everybody knows what low T is, right? Hormone panels that tell men that they're low in testosterone, or women. So what does it find? Slight testosterone drops, which are often just normal aging. What does it push? Testosterone replacement, pellets, oral usage, creams. There's a lot of different delivery methods. Why is it a red flag? Well, it's used to sell expensive therapies that come with risks of stroke, infertility, prostate issues, and patients are usually not told of these risks. And men often think that taking testosterone is going to make them an animal at the gym or better in the sack. And generally, neither is true, because probably they're not low in testosterone. Plus, excessive testosterone has caused many problems, not least of which are road rage and divorce. Number 11, adrenal fatigue panels. What does it find? Cortisol dysregulation. What does it push? Hormones or supplements. Why is it a red flag? The condition isn't even recognized by conventional medicine. It's often used as a catch-all to sell supplement protocols, particularly petrochemical-based vitamin B complex. And awareness is growing that there's not really this adrenal fatigue thing. There's a more complex interplay between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal gland. So this whole adrenal fatigue thing may have been quite the myth. Number 12, C-reactive protein, or CRP. What does it find? Inflammation. What does it push? Statin drugs or anti-inflammatory drugs. Why is it a red flag? This is the one that I mentioned, being told that I had this year 20 times more CRP than I normally do, or is normal or healthy. The problem with CRP is it's super nonspecific. Elevated CRP can mean that you exercised yesterday or that you have a cold. And I asked my practitioner when he told me that I had CRP levels of a smoker. I said, well, what do you think the problem is? Do I need to be tested for cancer or something? And he said, I'm not puffy anywhere. My face isn't puffy. My fingers aren't puffy. No joints hurt. Even though I play sports and work out every single day, I feel fine. And his response was, no, this is a biomarker I see lots of weird fluctuations in. So just get another test in a few months. So that's another $65 and another drive across town and taking a whole vial of blood when they really just need a drop. So I've seen so much in my research about labs that I really just don't lose any sleep over it. Okay, number 13, IgG food sensitivity panels. What does it find? It finds dozens of reactive foods. What does it push? Elimination diets and supplements. Why is it a red flag? IgG reflects exposure, not intolerance. As in, it's telling you what you ate yesterday or 2 days ago. It's not telling you what you shouldn't eat. So it often leads to unnecessary restriction and fear. 1 year, just for the sake of science, I got 3 different food sensitivity tests done, and each of them told me completely different foods that I was supposedly sensitive to. There wasn't a single overlapping food in any of those 3 tests. So that really led me to not value these tests much at all. And they aren't cheap. Okay, I'm going to skip the last 6 because this video got really long. But bottom line is, let's sum up here. Some of these labs will just naturally fluctuate daily, and one-time testing often leads to misdiagnosis and overtreatment. So we're in an environment where doctors love to prescribe labs because patients love to get them because they think it tells them the status of their health. You deserve informed consent. Your lab test should inform, not scare you into dependency. So if your lab work comes with a prescription, but no lifestyle discussion, that's a big red flag right there. If you ask me, I'll do the other 7, but I just felt this was getting a little bit longer. And thanks for following Green Smoothie Girl, and I'll see you next time.
Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for being with me on the Vibe Show. Please be on the email list at greensmoothiegirl.com so that you know when my new book, Take Daily, How Supplements Hijack Our Health. I think you're going to read it and you are going to be glad you did, because you'll be able to peacefully let go of having to spend hundreds of dollars a month on supplements. I know that so many of you do. We actually asked on the Green Smoothie Girl page recently, how much money do you spend a month on supplements? And we had people telling us as high as $1,000 plus per month. I mean, that's some people's mortgage payment, right? So I've had people tell me, since I've been publishing a lot on this topic just on social media and on my blog, I've had people tell me in the last few months, I've quit taking my supplements since you've been publishing about this so much and doing a bit of my own research too, I hope. I'm not taking the gobs and gobs of pills that I used to be taking, and I feel so much better. So this isn't me telling you stop taking anything specific, okay? I'm not giving you medical advice. It's just wanting you to know there are some controversies here, and I want you to know that you do always have a choice. When you are told to take some pill, you do have a choice about it, and that's just basic informed consent. That's not me impersonating a doctor. So with all of that, please make sure that you're on the mailing list so that I can let you know when my book publishes. We're really kind of ready to go. And we were told that June, July, and August are a bad time to launch the books. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.